ideological values of students and staff. To get preferential access to federal funds, according to a 10-point memo sent by the government, the memo demands that schools cap international undergraduate enrollment at 15%, ban the use of race or sex in hiring and admissions, freeze tuition for 5 years, requiring that applicants take the SAT or a similar test, and quell grade inflation. This has caused some discontentment among the students, who have expressed the hope that President Donald Trump will reconsider in spite of his previous dealings with American universities. Let's listen in. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, what impact could this Trump administration's proposed 10-point memo have on the diversity of student population and the overall international reputation of U.S. colleges?
Zuma, good to see you.
Thank you.
What this is actually about is challenging basically what the administration feels is anti-American sentiment and teaching that comes from these universities, and challenging values that they disagree with and what they actually believe in. So in regard to all the DEI, they are then diversity, equity, inclusion. They're also concerned that academic standards are lowered, and it seems as though the results are going up. But where are the academic standards? That's what they want to see measured. And also, as you've just said, in regard to students taking those tests before they actually come into university, are those tests standardized? And what is the rigor of those? That's what's very, very important. And also the other thing is, of course, is that universities have relied on international students, the amount that they pay for fees, which is far higher. And also then the Trump administration has then been looking at the amount of who is actually investing in universities. So if the UAE, Qatar, etc., is then investing in universities, do they then have power over what is taught or an ideology that's pushed? And we also have to remember the pro-Palestinian protests that have been going on American universities, and also the fact that dear Jewish students have been censored, have been attacked, their lessons have been disrupted, and other fellow students thinking that they should be barred from coming to the universities in the way that they've carried out behaviour that we've seen over the last 2 years. And also, if we remember when the ex head of Harvard University, surname of Gay, then coming on. And then we remember this congressional meeting and then being challenged about the conduct and the anti-Semitism that is on these universities, and then saying things, well, things have to be, put in a context. Well, my context is we look through history in regard to these universities and what's gone on, especially in Harvard, where in 1934, you are inviting over to Harvard to speak, the foreign press secretary of Hitler. And people may think, Mark, well, why is all this relevant? We have to go back in history and look at who is influencing who. And within education, if you then want to influence future generations, then if you are like the Trump administration who cares for American values, you are going to look at this as a whole and look at what's been happening over the last 2 years and before that, and turn around, especially if we go back to the lead up to the first Trump administration, and go back to all of the history of what's gone on at Berkeley, for argument's sake, in universities and the disruption of that. So what is taught, what is then going in the mind of young people is a concern of the Trump administration. Asuma.
And building on that now, looking back at these challenges that U.S. universities could face if they don't comply with the memo's requirements?
Well, some of these universities have huge trusts. They're extremely wealthy, but they also are they're relying on on the federal funds. Some of previously some educational leaders there have said, you know, we will comply. We will be listening to what the Trump administration has been putting out, and the challenges that it has actually done to the universities. We may see some bodies question this, but it's also about the federal funding, and the Trump administration will be strict on that and withdraw that unless, as it's just come out, here's some 10 points. Please adhere to this, and then we can move forward. This is going to take a little bit of time, especially as there's been a shutdown there in regard to having this discussion and pursuing it forward. Asuma.
Right. And how might this change, or because since they're putting a cap of 15%, how might this change the international students coming into US? Do you think they will go to UK instead, or maybe Australia instead?
Well, again, that is all up in the air. It's a bit like with in regard to the visas, in regard to the tech side of things, and suddenly China is creating a different visa, so it's trying to get certain brains into China now that there's that opportunity that they may not be going to America because they've got to pay such high fees to then get in and work for various companies. We're gonna wait and see. But the other thing is that the big challenge for the Trump administration is to then they've got 3.5 years to put a root and branch educational standard through. This is a huge job because you are tackling such ideology, such a number of things that have been going on for many years. You've got to really back up and reverse many things that, as I say, that have been going on for a long time. Asuma, who knows in many ways, but yes, people will be having to rethink this. Plus, also, they're looking at they need to be looking at, as they are looking at training their own young people within America. And if you passionately believe, as we may have seen, we have seen that a college child goes off to college. As a parent, you release them. You think they have certain values, certain beliefs, and they go off to college and completely and utterly change. And as a parent, you don't recognize them when they come back. And this is what the Trump administration is saying. We don't recognize a lot of these young people anymore because they are not adhering to traditional American values and valuing the nation that they actually live in. So civics, which is not taught, which has not been taught properly for a long time in American schools, is another thing that I'm sure that they will look at, because that is the whole that is the secondary education part before people then move on to universities and college. That's why I say it's a huge job, but they are determined to tackle it. In regard to international numbers, we will see, and of course some universities will be going, oh my goodness me, that's a big revenue stream. That's why Trump is putting part of this 10-point plan forward. You may be losing that revenue stream, but we will back this up with federal funds. But this is what you have to do to get that. Asuma.
And Mark, do you think, well, we can only speculate here, but do you think that other countries, other Western countries, which is popular for international students studying abroad, do you think they might follow this suit of keeping this kind of points so that they can keep their own civic sense or their own values?
Assume time will tell, but we cannot sit here and deny it. There is an ideological war going on, and our education system is where that ends up being the biggest fight, because if you are training young people in regard to how they think, they will then take that into the wider world once they've left university. There's part of me that says, I hope it does. I hope it does as well, because there are certain things that we see going on in universities around the world. On a personal level, I don't agree with. We need to then challenge that. But as you may say, but yes, but Mark, we need to get the balance with free speech. Yes, I hear that. But the problem is that when people are then speaking, in many cases, say with the war in with Gaza, with Hamas and Israel, that we have to remember history. We have to talk about many years of history to then be able to talk about that issue properly, in my opinion, and that is what part of this is all about, which is actually teaching history, teaching where you come from, what's important about your nation, what are your nations done, and actually buying into that, because the ideological fight is, you could say on the one hand, is against people that believe in nation states and people that do not and believe in globalism and want to create one big utopian dream that would make someone like Lenin extremely proud. Asuma.
Yeah, right. And Mark, how do you think? Do you think that it's realistically achievable? Since for the past few decades, we've seen U.S. have a lot of immigrants, and now there's second generation, some even fifth generation. I've met American fifth generation people from immigrant families. So don't you think these people have already brought in their culture with them, and it will be very difficult for Trump administrations to revive what they call American civic sense back to students?
Well, the other thing is that if you do go to America and you go to the flyover states, you will then be very rest assured that there is that values that have built America are, on one hand, are very much alive. But if we keep but we see certain aspects of what's happening in California, for argument's sake, where that is being challenged. But it all depends. If we're watching certain media, we will then believe that things are not, on one hand, and not in a very good place. Then you're raising the whole issue, quite rightly, of integration. If you then move to a particular country, then you should respect that country's values and integrate and play a contributory role to the country that you have moved to. This is all about that. This is what one of the ideology of thinking that people are challenged. If you are then going to move to America and then over time have the thoughts of saying, no, we're not going to integrate at all, we're going to challenge everything that America is founded on and the Constitution of the United States, then understandably you are going to then collide with definitely with the present administration. And also to add in that regard, of course, America, we look in the past and we look at how much of immigration has taken place in regard to America. But again, it's that whole thing of assimilating, being part and being proud of the nation state that you have then learnt, the American Constitution, sworn allegiance to America, and then you need to conduct yourself in that particular way. If you don't, then like with any nation, if you are then not integrating, then that does provide a balkanization of thinking, people into separate groups, and it then builds up to a variety of different problems, as we are seeing. Yes. As we are seeing in the world. Asuma.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now, this has caused some discontentment among the students who have expressed the hope that President Trump will reconsider in spite of his previous dealings with American universities. Let's listen in.
I think it's honestly really sad because I feel like international students make up a good portion of our population here, and they make up what our university is. And I do have a lot of friends who are international students, and they're like some of the smartest, like coolest people I know.
This is